You're listening to Maneuvering Mondays, a podcast about transforming work culture. This is the second part of the episode, and in this part, we have invited one or more guest experts to share their best advice to Marie from Zebra Apps.
And your hosts today are AK
and Ivanna Rosendal.
And in this episode, your guests are AK
and Ivanna Rosendal.
Yes, so in this episode, it will just be the two of us, because this is the actual last episode of the entire podcast.
Woo.
For now.
Until further notice.
Yes, in this current version of the podcast. So today is about wrapping up everything, talking a bit about the last part of the chapter 6, and then also a little bit about where we are right now in the book process and next steps.
Yes. I'm excited that you and I get to wrap this up together.
Yes.
And also, we've both been kind of curious how this will go when we don't have a guest to talk to us.
Yes. Yeah, and we have been doing this for 2 years.
2 years.
We started 2 years ago. Yeah. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. While we have been recording this podcast, a baby was born.
True.
I've moved countries twice.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of change has happened in our personal lives.
Absolutely. But it's been a very fun and great side hustle to do. That was like the stable thing.
Yeah.
Going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rather addicting too.
Exactly. And I will really miss talking to all of our amazing guests and thought leaders and experts. And I hope we can find a way to keep doing that.
I agree. I've definitely learned a lot from the guests we've had. And often we think we have an idea about something, and then a guest comes in and like flips it on its head, and we're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Exactly. And it's been so fun getting inspiration from the guests to how the story would evolve. So it's been a really special and fun process. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's. So AK, for this last last part, could you summarize for us what happens in the story part for our viewers and listeners?
Yes. We have to take our own medicine, and of course, this is the first question we will do. And now there's a lot of pressure because our guests have been so great at summing up. But what I made some notes here. So this final part is, of course, about wrapping up everything and making sure that all of our characters get their ending in one way or the other. And I will say that's like the overall topic of this last part, but I did have some highlights that I wanted to share. So we start this section of the chapter in this meeting setting, where we have a group of people discussing the future of Zebra and how to kind of save the company, basically, because we learned that it's actually the financial situation is really, really bad, and they will not have money to continue as is for very long. So there's a lot of pressure, and these people are in this room trying to figure out what to do. And we have a bit of a breakdown with Natalie, the CEO, who gets really upset. And then suddenly Marie remembers it's late in the day and she forgot to pick up her child. And I think that this situation is kind of the climax of the whole storyline with Marie and her personal life versus her professional life. And she goes to pick up Ellie, who was picked up by another kid's mom. And she has a little standoff with this other mom, Carrie's mom, who we also met previously in the story. So I think that was an interesting part of the ending. Mm-hmm. Then we also have a situation where Marie and Todd and Anne meet up in a cafe. And Todd is this other HR professional from a competing company, and Anne is our friend who used to work at Zebra. And they meet up and talk about this whole situation. And basically, I think it's Todd who suggests let's start our own company and advise people on organizational transformation. But we also learn later that this is not what Marie chooses to do, because she ends up actually joining Jack in a new company, which is where they kind of spin out the data center and make it an AI learning company. And Jack will be the CEO, and he then offers Marie to become COO, and she is very thrilled about that. And that's basically, I think, like the main parts. Of course, then we follow all of the side stories and how they wrap up as well. And I think another interesting one is Mark, who is maybe one of the characters with the, I will say, least happy ending. He ends up in a little bit of a, like, I will say, place where he's just taking a break and a little bit lost in his way, and he doesn't really know where he's going. Yeah, I think that's it. And then we end on a very positive note with this new company, and they're going to Germany and basically going to take over the world. So it's very beautiful. Do you have anything you want to add to my summary?
I think that was a very good summary. Another thing I want to highlight is Natalie's trajectory in this last part, where she kind of connects with her purpose, which is all about making making learning better. Yeah, that is her passion. And one of the things that crushes her with ASO is that focus has been lost. And she ends up, actually going back to her teaching roots and focusing on that part.
Yeah, we actually just discussed this with Sophie in this chapter about like Natalie's that she is the CEO, but she also in this last chapter really wants to get into the product development part and say like, okay, I will fix everything then, and that wasn't really a good approach in her role as a CEO, because in her former position she had a team to do that.
Yes.
And she had a team who was working on trying to save the company. But I think that in this new setup, with this new company, she's in a much better place. So I think that was a good ending for her.
Yeah.
And she was doing a really bad job as CEO. You can say for sure. So also good for everyone that she should not do that anymore.
Yeah, and that's one of the topics that I would be interested to discuss with you today. It's this Natalie's trajectory. And we've had both guests and beta readers comment that, wow, she's a really incompetent CEO.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
And for me, it's people have also commented, well, is it realistic that a CEO would be this incompetent? But from my perspective, I've experienced people in leadership positions definitely having been promoted above their level of competency and not always being able to catch up, or at least like in the process of catching up to their new level of responsibility. I believe it's called, was it the Peter principle, that you get promoted above your competency level. And this can happen to a CEO too, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also part of this is it unrealistic? I don't think so. Like one thing is we don't necessarily know everything. Like we only see, most of the time we see things from Marie's perspective. So we also don't know what Natalie is up to other than what Marie is seeing and interpreting. So that's one part. There could be reasons for some of the things, I'm sure. And then the other part is that she could also be I think we know this whole founding story of Zebra, where they used to be two people founding. And I think that maybe part of the problem is that Richard was the person in charge of half of the things, and then he left, and she didn't get another person. It seems like that no one really replaced him. And I think that she was actually in a good place when they were a team, but after he left, I think she lost her way. And so I think that's also part of the reason why things were so bad with her. because she was actually in over her head and she missed that other part. So of course she should have seen that herself, and or someone, maybe an advisory board or something, or the board of directors should have been telling her to find another person to fill that role or get some help or something. But I don't think it's unrealistic.
Yeah, and I would agree. And also, like, I am a person who functions best in partnerships, like our partnership, AK. I need other people to complement me and for things to actually make sense. So I imagine missing half the twosome would be detrimental to anything that I do.
And I really think that could be the case in this situation. So for Natalie, so it's a good point from our beta readers and others, but I think unfortunately many people will recognize some of these things in their own professional lives.
And that is also the feedback that we have received, that some people are like, wow, I've seen this.
Yeah, exactly. And she did manage to, I think, another point worth mentioning, she did manage to build a company that many people wanted to fight for saving, right?
Yes.
A lot of people have been involved in trying to save zebra apps, and to some extent, I mean, Natalie has part of that. I think she should have credit for building that in the first place.
I completely agree. I have one of the people who has been fighting for zebra apps is Anne, who is no longer with the company. And besides, in this last part, she and Marie and Todd, well, they hang out with each other and talk about organizational development. But we also kind of discovered that this whole time where we thought Anne always knew what the answers were and knew what to do, she actually didn't necessarily know, and she was just trying to be helpful, but actually didn't know the answers. When you read this piece, AK, were you disappointed, or or did this seem realistic?
I was not disappointed. I think that it's a probably a realization that had been some time on the way for Anne too, like that kind of self-reflection. Because I think that previously in the story she came off much more as if she had everything figured out. I think she sometimes even came off a little bit arrogant and as if she just knew everything. So I think it was actually good to kind of see some more self-reflecting from her part. I was a little bit like disillusioned by that part about how there is this comment about like, oh, but we don't really actually know anything about, like, no one can really know how to make companies work better. So all we can do is just stay in the struggle, kind of. That was a conclusion. And I think that was a little bit like, okay, is this really the conclusion? That is so sad. But I personally don't think that is true. I mean, of course, I agree totally that it's a really complex area and it's really hard to make a plan. Of course, I don't believe in you can just make a plan and say, now we do ABC and then we will have the result and everything will be good. But the reason, I think part of the purpose of this entire story is to show that there are small things we can do and we can keep trying and we can experiment and we can really be aware and conscientious about how we can try to tackle these dysfunctions, both from a cultural perspective, structural perspective, technology perspective, very like these all these different lenses. I think we also had, was it Benoit from the lady, we talked about this, the operating model and how to like apply different views when you think about making a company perform and people happy, which I think is also a lot what this is about, not just the performance, but also the well-being at work.
No, I agree, and I disagree with Anne's disillusionment too. I think we definitely also know things that work better than others. So, and also I think we as like as a behavioral science know which things not to do to make organizations work.
And I think that what we try to illustrate in this story is that often people can have really good intentions, but because it's human beings, it's so hard to predict what will happen and how people will react. And there's so many factors in play. So it's really hard to just have this very linear approach of saying, in the beginning, Marie was all like, okay, we launched this culture program. Okay, we need to do a town hall and offsite with the leadership, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, she just gets completely distracted and caught up in a totally different direction than she had thought. And I honestly think that's very realistic. And what happens. And that's also what we're trying to write a story that people can recognize.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's what is that saying? Life is what happens when you make other plans.
Yes, I think that's John Lennon. Like that. But yes, yeah, I think that I actually had that as this whole statement of that we don't know how we can make companies work, but I had that as a question for you, so I'm glad we got to cover that.
I have another thing that I'm curious about. We have this whole situation. Well, you and I are both mothers.
Oh my God, I have this on my list as well. I will tell you the question that I have.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I can quickly do it, and then you can continue. I have, what the hell is Ellie's mom's problem? Now you go.
I love the phrasing of that. There are two things happening. First of all, it does seem like she might have an interest in Thomas, Marie's
There's
husband.
something there, right? Isn't it? I think that was very suspicious. Like, she called me 3 times this week or something.
Yeah. Which is, well, we don't get a lot of information about that, but it sure seems like there might be something happening there, some intentions. And then there's this whole competition, like parenting as a competition. And the mother wins who never fails and always succeeds. I don't know if you've experienced that in the daycare system that your child is currently in, but I have experienced this in like in the schools that my children have been in. There can be this sort of kind of competition. I am the most superior parent, and kind of showing off parenting chops.
I think you have a lot more experience because your kids are a bit older than mine.
Yeah.
I only have like 2 years. So it's not that bad yet, but I can definitely, I feel the pressure without necessarily having met any parents who, try to make me feel better or anything. There is definitely pressure, I will say, as a working person who also would like to pick up her child at a reasonable time in the day and not forget her.
Yeah. Well, I have received comments. So my kids are both in school, and they have an after-school program that they both attend, which is open until 5. And the times where I have picked them up around 4:30, they are the last ones there. And also, like the teachers who remain come, oh, you're picking up late today. I'm like, you're open for another half hour. What is the problem?
And this is an after-school program.
Yes.
Yeah.
For children to be there after school.
Exactly.
So it's kind of illustrating that whole dynamic, and I just I wish that we were more in it together as parents.
Yeah. Yes, and I know I was a little hard on Ellie's mom because I guess you could also argue that she is trying to look out for Ellie, or like there is some degree of course, the child's interest, and I don't want to disregard that at all. Of course, I think it's not okay that she forgot to pick her up, and also I think there is kind of this whole situation where another mom just takes the child home instead of having the kindergarten call. I think that was a really weird scenario. But anyways, I think it's a very interesting kind of storyline. Which is going on throughout the entire story, and I think there's also the part with Thomas when he comes home, and he's really upset because Marie forgot to pick her up, but he had also been away for the full day, and yeah, there's just this. I feel like Carrie's mom is after Marie and not Thomas.
Yeah.
So I think that's also a theme.
Yes. Yeah. I would agree. There's a, and unfortunately, even though we live in Scandinavia, which is one of the most equal societies in the world, there's still there are different expectations for mothers and fathers.
Absolutely.
And a lot of applause for fathers doing basic things, and none of that for mothers necessarily.
No. Totally agree. I think both of us have the fathers of our children are very active and present and
absolutely
in our children's life. And there's a lot of things that he is responsible for. Where I feel like people would normally ask me, and I'm just like, I have no clue. Ask Kenneth. He's the person. He knows all of this. He's the one who knows what clothes she has down there in the kindergarten.
Yes.
Does she have like extra spare clothes if she gets
her
stuff gets dirty? He's the one keeping charge of that, but everyone will always ask me.
Yeah, it's the same. Simon is in charge of. He's chief Playdate officer.
Yeah, good.
But very often parents message me first, like, "Oh, can Kama have a Playdate on this date?" And I'm like, "Please ask Simon."
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah, but I think that's. I personally like that part of the book throughout the whole story, because I think it also added a layer to Marie's character, and like understanding her more as a whole human being and not just as the head of development HR.
There is another evolution that I am curious to discuss with you.
Yes.
And that is between Jacques and Marie.
Oh yeah. They start where she had to win him over, and they end up as partners in crime.
Yeah, that's quite the evolution. In the beginning, he didn't want to talk to her at all. Throughout the story, he takes her food.
Yeah, very inappropriate behavior. Yeah.
But I think also there's an evolution to Jacques himself, as he takes more and more responsibility and starts understanding what is up with Zebra. I think he also seems to try and focus on, well, what could actually work instead of accusing others of not doing their jobs.
So to me, I think that the two people, at least some of the people I disliked the most, ended up being in the company that Marie joined in the end. So we have Jacques and Shane. And these two people have throughout the story both shown what I think are very problematic behaviors, and still they end up being the ones that she joins. So what do you make of that?
I think that's a very good observation, and also like Jacques and Shane are definitely the two characters that I have been annoyed most with.
Exactly. And the least popular ones, except for maybe Marie, who's also very unpopular, but we can talk more about that later.
So Shane is this. He has like a horrible way of talking to people. And he is arrogant and disregards other people's value and thinks that he's the center of the universe. But then he actually does have good ideas.
Yes.
And I don't know. There's I think the jury is still out on Shane. Let's see how he fares in the new company.
Yeah. And same with Jack. Like he has also been really, I think, saying inappropriate comments, eating Marie's bun without asking, or like, in general, it's weird, I think, eating your coworker's food, even if you ask. But yeah, so it was just interesting to me. But again, that might also be realistic, that like in the ideal world, of course, you would want to work with the people that you like the most as people, but it's not always how things pan out. And sometimes it's just not the people you like the most who are the ones that gets the best ideas, or have the role that you need in your new company. So I guess it's a choice.
Yeah, I would love to work with only people that I like, but that is, I don't know if that's possible, or maybe even if that would be a good outcome.
Yeah, that's also the question, right? Is it maybe a good thing that they're not necessarily the same types of people? Like, can it get too friendly? I was about to ask. Is that a weird question?
Yeah, maybe that some of that friction is actually necessary to make things progress. So this is also like the culture is going to remain a struggle in the new company.
That's very likely, I think. But they do actually have a little talk about culture in the end, Jack and Marie. And I think that was interesting too. I think they talk about their values in the new company and whether or not to put them on a poster. And Marie says kind of like, as long as we live them, we don't need a poster. Is that true?
Ooh, but that's a beautiful tie back to the beginning of the story, where the values, because they were not on posters or slides, they kind of got forgotten and lost.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there was a one-to-one relation, like if that was why they got lost, but I think that it would certainly have helped to have them more visible, right? So people would not forget or let other things guide them in their life.
I think it is helpful when values are continuously repeated, and also when making decisions in a company, saying, well, these are our values. When we have to make these big decisions, well, we should let our values guide us in how we make them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can say that you and I actually had our original idea with this book was that we wanted to write a book about how to work with organizational culture, which I think we did. I think we still succeeded with that objective, but I think that in my mind, that would take us a different place.
Yes.
I had pictured that we would be more kind of giving advice on specific techniques to work with your values in a tangible way. And it would be more about like that part, the culture program itself. But then, real life happened and things took a turn. And
yes. And this is also, we did end up doing something different than we had originally envisioned.
Which is the beauty of working iteratively.
Yes.
In iterations. Yeah.
And part of it is the feedback we got from our guests as we went along. But now we might actually end up doing something completely different based on the feedback from our beta readers who have read the story from end to end.
Yeah.
And one of the things some of our beta readers have advised us on is actually taking out all of the teaching elements of the book.
And maybe this is also a good time to share. We had originally thought that we would be doing more of a practical handbook.
Yes.
So it would be more of a like with illustrations and a QR code, and then people could scan and could find all these tools that could tackle the things in the chapter. And maybe we will still do this. So I'm not saying that idea is dead, but it definitely, we kind of stopped. In the beginning, we have incorporated these teachable moments where we kind of list some tools and some ideas, and we kind of stopped doing that as the story evolves. So I think that one of our to-dos now is to find out how do we incorporate that element in a more natural way than it is right now.
Yes. And maybe this is a good time to kind of give our listeners a summary of where are we actually at with this book.
Exactly. Agree. Totally agree. Yes, where are we at?
Well, first of all, it's we have a draft 1 of the manuscript.
Yay! We have a book. We talked to a publisher who said, "Good job. You made a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yes.
We were like, okay, thank you. We didn't know that was a success criteria in itself, but apparently many people never make it through this beginning. So it's good that we have all three.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we've submitted the manuscript to a number of publishers, and we have actually, many publishers who are willing to work with us.
Yes.
Luckily, also we have worked with a professional editor who read our book from end to end and gave us amazing advice.
He was amazing. Yeah.
And I learned a lot about writing style.
Yes.
Like things I was like, oh, this makes total sense.
Yeah.
Which I would not have learned otherwise.
I think it was a really good process with her to kind of have someone outside of the entire process who had not been listening to the podcast or anything, who was just like checking in and reading everything cover to cover. Because I think the other part of the story is, as we said before, it's been 2 years. It's been a long time. Many things happened since we started.
Yes.
So obviously it's also taken many directions that we couldn't have known when we started. So it was nice to have someone look at the whole product. Yeah.
And then we had a number of beta readers read the book
thank
from
you
end to
so
end.
much. Shout out.
Yes.
You're amazing. Thank you.
And we got a lot of very valuable feedback.
Yeah.
One person who read through the story commented on some of the technology choices that we make in the book.
Yeah. Like, this is really weird. Like, why would they have this kind of server? Okay. Maybe we should look into the technical part again.
Yes. And a lot of comments about the characters and the story arc.
Yeah.
Which have been really good.
I absolutely agree. Maybe we should share that one big thing that people don't like.
Yes, let's share it.
The ending.
People hate the ending.
People don't like the ending, and this is basically what we're discussing today. That part of the story, and what they don't like is that, first of all, some people think that everything wraps up too nicely, that it's a bit unrealistic, that Mark is basically the only one who doesn't get a happy ending, and then the other part is that Marie needs to leave to pick up Ellie, and then they make some decisions in the room while she's not there. Mm-hmm. And the feedback is like, she's your main character, she should be there. We want to know how she reacts and how she feels, which is fair.
It's like it's no.
So, but yeah, I think there was also another attempt to make it realistic, because sometimes life happens, as you said, Ivanna. Like, you need to run for something private or an emergency, and then you miss out on an important decision or discussion. But yes, I think that was an important point. And then I also noted, in terms of all of the characters, that the feedback we get again and again is that there is a lot to keep track of. So we need to find a way to make it, either we need to cut out some of our people, which I don't think we will, but maybe we will have to. And the other approach is that we should try to give some tools to help people keep an overview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that is like when they say kill your darlings in editing, like here we're talking about actually killing off people.
Yeah, actual darlings. Yeah, true. Very true. And I noted 3 questions down for you, and one of them we talked about already. So my first question is, and this is from the beta readers, so it was just to say like 3 things that people caught that I thought we could quickly discuss now. One thing we discussed already: why can Natalie get away with being so incompetent? We talked about that. Then we had another question about, isn't Marie a little bit naive? And isn't she a little bit too junior in her decisions and way of navigating, considering her experience and level? Mm-hmm. Like, how did she make it to head of development HR when she's so stupid? So yeah, what do you think?
And that's such a great question. And also, like a lot of our guests who we had on the podcast point out all the shortcomings of Marie.
Yeah.
And are very annoyed with her in general. which is funny to have the lead character who people are really frustrated with.
Yeah, exactly.
I think from my perspective, Marie just kind of throws her into some of these problems without necessarily having a thought through plan. And in my experience in working for large organizations so far, a lot of that happens. People just do things without necessarily applying the right methodologies or frameworks or thinking things through properly.
And often I think it's a question of urgency. Like,
exactly, yeah.
There's this notion in the company, like we don't have time to pause right now and analyze for a month. We need to just do something and try something.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's driving a lot of these decisions.
Yeah, and so for me, I've seen it too many times for this to seem unrealistic.
There's also the other part about, like, is it even possible to analyze a better way of approaching things? Like, is it so complex that the only way is actually just to try something and then iterate and learn and try again, which I think is Marie's approach. I can see the feedback in terms of sometimes I think she listens a lot to her colleagues and other stakeholders in a very uncritical way. She's just like, oh, this person said that, so I will do it. Like when Eric, for instance, suggests that, oh, why don't I just take over your job and then you can go in and be a coach in this random department? I think it's a little bit weird that she's just being completely like, oh, yes, I should do that, of course, and not think it more through, basically. I know she doesn't accept it the first time, but still.
Yeah, that seems implausible. And also, this is one of the feedbacks that we're going to do something about as we edit the first version to the second version. Is try and augment some of Marie's reactions to the feedback that she gets.
Yeah, totally. My last question is, why is Zebra worth saving?
And that's an excellent question. I love that. Actually, several of our beta readers post this question. Why do people fight so hard to keep this company?
Yeah.
And from my perspective, this company has a mission worth pursuing. They want to make learning more accessible. They want to promote learning that actually works for children and teachers. They were founded on this strong mission that they might have lost sight of a little bit.
Yeah.
So for me, that is the difference that they can make for learning is the reason why it's worth saving.
Yeah. Agree. And I think we have a group of very passionate people, even people who left the company, who keeps for some reason coming back to try to save the day, which is also, I think, a general thing that's interesting in this story, that there's so many people who not even work at Zebra who are concerned about Zebra.
Yeah.
But of course, I mean, there's also a lot of people who just, like the beginning of the story, we have a retention issue. We have a problem with people leaving. So I think there's also many people who does not want to fight, who just leave. And I think maybe another really big question is why do they find out so late that they have such financial trouble?
Yeah. And that's another good question. I think part of the explanation is that we lost the CFO pretty early on.
True. Yeah.
So he might have not been able to communicate that. And also the CFO, while he was there was already a lawsuit happening. So he might have been distracted.
Absolutely. True.
And it took Jacques a little while to catch up and understand what was actually going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I, by the way, think that the CFO was another interesting story arc in terms of we don't really get to know a lot about Frank while he's like as a person in the company directly from him, but we hear a lot about him from other people. And I think it's just interesting how in the beginning we think he's kind of an asshole, or like, sorry, that was maybe a bit hard, but he's not that nice to Sheila in the facilitation session at the leadership offsite, and then and there's this whole very fuzzy or like very foggy situation with Andrea, where I think as a reader, you assume for a long time that there was kind of some sort of harassment
Yes.
ongoing, and then it turns out to be something completely different. So I think it's also this, we get to love him more as the story unfolds and find out a lot about him after he's actually out of the company.
Yeah, and we've had mixed feedback on that too.
True. Very true. Yes. Yes, but I think I don't have anything else on my list.
I have a question for you, AK.
Okay, bring it on.
Usually we ask our guests what they hope for happens next in the story.
Yeah.
But I will ask you, what do you hope happens next with the book?
Oh, good question. Oh, I was ready to think about like what I hope for Zebra AI, but but it's okay. I can think about the real life book. I hope that we find a really good partner to publish with. I hope that we get to learn a lot about that process, and get insights into now we have already learned a lot about writing a book. I'm very excited for the next chapter, metaphorically speaking, about about how we actually get it out to readers.
Yes.
I think that part is going to be super fun. So I really hope we will, as I said, find someone to help guide us in that process, because there is certainly a lot to think about and many different elements. And I think some of them we can probably do on our own, but a lot we need professionals to help us.
Yes.
I also really hope that we will be able to reach people with this story, and that people will appreciate like the storyline in itself, but also hopefully be inspired by the different maneuvers. And finally, that we can find a way to incorporate all of the amazing advice we have gathered from all of our great guests throughout these 2 years.
Those are great wishes.
What do you hope?
Well, I think we've learned a lot about writing a manuscript now.
Yes.
The things I had no clue about 2 years ago. I do hope we learn more about the publishing process now, which is kind of the next stage, and marketing and distribution.
Yes.
And then my very not so secret hopes are that Maneuvering Monday becomes a TV series.
Oh yeah, true. This is true. Yes. We already know who will play some of the characters.
Yes. And then I would be very excited to write the next book with you.
Yay! Me too.
Applying all the learnings that we have from this book, and like avoiding so many beginner mistakes next time.
Yeah, by the way, we learned after finishing the manuscript that there are really good tools for keeping track of all the characters.
You don't have to keep track of everything in your head, I have learned.
No. In 2024, there's actually software that can help you with that. But for some reason, we didn't think of this before.
No.
It was done. So Ivanna, you had like a very analog paper trail of
yes.
on like all the story arcs and everything going on.
Like imagine one of those murder case solving boards with the red threads. Yeah. I have learned there's software for this.
So yes, we could have tracked this in the software. So next book will be at least one learning is we'll write that in the software.
Yes. Yeah. And it formats and stuff for you. That's
amazing. Yeah, technology, right? Yes. And then I'm just excited to be doing this with you.
Me too. And well, I one of the things I have enjoyed the most the last 2 years is our partnership.
Yes, you're my Richard.
You're my Natalie.
Oh no, I don't want to. Okay, let's. But no, but likewise, it's. I could literally not have done it without you.
Yeah. Likewise. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, and thank you to all of our listeners, and to all of our beta readers, and all of our guest experts who have helped us.
Voice talents.
And voice talents. Oh my God! Yes, this is something else.
This is something else.
For the
No.
last chapter, we did an AI cloning of my voice.
Yeah.
To read it.
How did that turn out?
I will say a mixed experience. You can get to judge for yourself because you will have heard it when you listen to this, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, we might do a little extra deep dive into working with AI for.
Yes. Yeah, but I will say props to the actual real human speakers.
Yes.
They did an amazing job. Thank you for that help.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, this is the last minute of the last episode so
Yes.
far. Go forth and maneuver.
Yes.
You're listening to Maneuvering Mondays, a podcast about transforming work culture.